Have you ever walked through your garden in the heat of mid-July and felt a pang of disappointment because those brilliant, neon-colored flowers you bought last month are starting to look a bit dusty? Like the sun has literally bleached the life out of them. For the longest time, I thought this was my fault. I assumed I had missed a watering session, or that the soil was poor, or that I simply didn't have the magic touch required to keep a garden looking like a magazine cover. I used to run outside with my shears and cut every single one of those fading blooms off, thinking I was cleaning up the mess. But I was wrong. I was actually throwing away the most beautiful part of the plant story. At No Secret Gardening, I've learned that some of the most stunning landscapes in the world don't fight the fade, they celebrate it. Today, I want to show you how to choose and nurture perennials that don't just wilt, but age like fine wine, turning your borders into a vintage masterpiece of copper, bronze, and dusky rose. My promise to you is this: by shifting your mindset and following a few simple rules, you can have a border that provides greens and colors for 90 days without replanting a single thing. The first thing we have to understand is that not all fading is created equal. There is a massive difference between a plant that is dying of thirst and a plant that is maturing. To know which one you have, let's start with our first practical proof. I call it the Midday Soil Test. Go out to your garden when the sun is at its peak. Don't just look at the dirt. Press your bare palm firmly against the soil for 5 seconds. If the ground feels hot enough to make you want to pull your hand away, your plants are in survival mode, not aging mode. No flower can age gracefully if its feet are cooking. This leads us to our first no secret gardening pocket rule. If the soil is scorching, the leaf suffers even with water. To get those beautiful antique tones, we need to keep the roots cool so the plant feels safe enough to let its petals dry slowly on the stem rather than shriveling in a panic. The second test is the hydration snap. Take a petal from a flower that is just starting to lose its primary neon glow. Gently fold it between your thumb and forefinger. If the petal creases and snaps like a dry cracker, the plant is stressed and lacks the cellular strength to age well. However, if the petal feels like soft suede or high-quality parchment, pliant, thick, and holding its shape, then you have a fine wine perennial in the making. This is the texture we are looking for. It means the plant is still hydrated but is naturally shifting its energy away from pigment production and toward seed protection. At No Secret Gardening, I am a vocal enemy of showcase plants. You know the ones. They are fed high-dose hormones in a greenhouse to look impossibly bright at the store, but they have no stamina. They are the fast fashion of the garden world. We want the workers. We want plants like the Autumn Joy, Sedum, or certain heritage hydrangeas. These plants are built for the long haul. In most backyards, especially if you have a busy life, you want a plant that handles the transition from summer to autumn without needing a therapist. If you are in a full sun all day scenario, you might think you're doomed to have a garden of crispy brown sticks. But usually, the problem isn't the sun, it's the lack of soil shelter. Remember, no shelter in the soil, no drama in the leaf. If you apply a 2-inch layer of wood chips or straw around the base of these perennials, you create a thermal blanket. This allows the plant to stay juicy on the inside while the sun paints those beautiful vintage colors on the outside. I've spent thousands of dollars over the years trying to keep vitrine plants alive, only to realize that the most respected garden designers in Europe actually look for these muted, papery textures to give a garden gravity and history. When a flower stays on the stem as it ages, it provides structure. It fills the gaps in your border. But there is a secret to how you water during this phase that determines if the flower turns into a beautiful antique or a moldy mess. Most people get this wrong and end up killing the plant right when it's about to look its best. I'll show you exactly how to avoid that master error in the next part. I lost a lot of money until I discovered this, and it all comes down to a 10-second rule. The master error that most gardeners fall into when they see their perennials starting to fade is what I call panic fertilizing. At No Secret Gardening, I've seen it 1,000 times. The pinks start to turn to dusty tan, and the gardener thinks, "Oh no, it's losing its nutrients." They rush out and dump a heavy dose of high nitrogen fertilizer on the roots. This is the worst thing you can do. By late summer, your perennial is trying to prepare for its fine wine stage. Forcing it to grow new, tender green shoots right now is like waking someone up with a loud alarm in the middle of a deep sleep. It stresses the plant, invites aphids, and worst of all, it makes the fading flowers turn a mushy, rot-like brown instead of a crisp, elegant bronze. Usually, the plant doesn't want food. It wants peace. To ensure your plants are in the right state for this transition, let's look at our second pocket rule. Summer is a trio: right plant, protected soil, and water at the right time. If you miss any part of this trio, the aging process breaks down. This brings us to a crucial practical proof: the 3-finger moisture test. Don't just poke the surface of the soil with your pinky. Take your index, middle, and ring fingers and bury them into the soil up to the second knuckle near the base of the plant. If the tip of your fingers feels cool and damp, but the surface is dry, you are in the perfect zone. If the soil feels like a dry sponge all the way down, your fine wine colors will never develop. The petals will simply drop off to save the plant's life. Let's look at our decision map for this stage of the season. If you are in a small backyard or a pot apartment scenario, you have to be extra careful with heat radiation. If your pots are sitting on a concrete balcony or right against a brick wall, that reflected heat is cooking the flowers from the backside. Se você está no cenário de vasos, afaste-os da parede, apenas 15 cm. This small gap allows air to circulate, dropping the temperature of the foliage just enough to let those faded colors stay vibrant for weeks longer. If you are in a full sun backyard, your decision is simple. If the plant is leaning or looking tired, don't feed it, mulch it. Adding fresh organic material to the top of the soil is the best snack you can give a maturing perennial. I learned this lesson the hard way after trying to maintain a showcase garden in a year with record-breaking heat. I was watering 3 times a day, but my flowers still looked terrible. It wasn't until I stopped trying to keep them young and started letting them age that the garden finally looked sophisticated. I swapped 2 sensitive plants that required constant deadheading for 5 varieties like echinacea and Joe Pye weed that actually look better as they dry out. These are the plants that give you harvest and beauty for months without the drama. One of the biggest blind spots people have is the health of the lower leaves. We tend to focus only on the flower at the top. But if the bottom leaves are turning yellow and falling off while the flower is fading, it's a sign of a drainage issue. No Secret Gardening is a no standing water zone. If the roots are sitting in a pool of water, the flower won't turn into a beautiful antique. It will turn into a gray, moldy sponge. Always ensure your soil is well drained. If you have heavy clay, planting your perennials on a slight mound can be the 10-second fix that saves the entire season. As we move deeper into the season, you'll notice that some plants have a structural secret. Even when the color is 100% gone, the shape remains. This is the hallmark of a true fine wine perennial. But how do you know when to finally cut it back? Is there a risk of leaving it too long? There is a very specific 7-day rescue plan. for when a plant starts to look ugly instead of antique. And I'm going to reveal that checklist next. I'll also show you the leaf test for color and firmness that tells you exactly if your plant is still thriving or if it's time to say goodbye for the winter. The next part solves the mystery of the stuck plant that refuses to change colors properly. When a plant gets stuck and refuses to transition into those beautiful antique tones, it's often because the light or the soil minerals are slightly out of balance. At No Secret Gardening, I've found that many gardeners get frustrated when their hydrangeas turn a muddy gray instead of a vintage lime or dusty rose. This is what I call stuck production. Usually, the technique to unlock those colors is a simple adjustment of the light. If a plant is in too much deep shade, it doesn't have the energy to finish its color cycle properly. On the other hand, if it's being blasted by reflected light from a white fence, the petals bleach before they can age. Here is our next practical proof to check the health of your aging border: the leaf test for color and firmness. Pick a leaf from the middle of the stem, not the very top and not the very bottom. Press it between your fingers. It should feel leathery and tough, not soft or wilted. If the leaf is firm but the flower looks old, you are doing great. This is the plant's way of saying, "I'm healthy, I'm just changing my clothes." If the leaf is limp, you have a hydration or root issue that needs to be solved before the flower can look good. Remember our pocket rule: no shelter in the soil, no drama in the leaf. Let's look at a short reel subscriber case. A member of our No Secret Gardening community was ready to rip out all their coneflowers because they were turning brown and ugly. But upon closer inspection, they weren't brown. They were a deep, rich chocolate bronze. The master error was comparing them to the bright purple flowers they were in June. Once they realized that these bronze seed heads were actually attracting goldfinches and providing a stunning contrast to the green shrubs behind them, they fell in love with the fade. If this happens to you, the solution is simple. Don't look at the flower in isolation. Look at the whole border. Those muted tones act as a buffer that makes your remaining late-season blooms pop even more. Now, for our decision map update for those of you in different environments. If you are in a partial shade scenario, your plants are the champions of the fine wine look. Because they aren't being scorched, the colors cure on the stem like high-quality tobacco leaves. In this scenario, do B. Give them even less water than you did in the spring. Let the soil dry out a bit more between waterings to encourage the plant to finish its cycle. If you are in a pot apartment scenario, do A. Rotate the pot every week. This ensures that the fade happens evenly across the entire plant, so you don't end up with one side that looks dead and one side that is still green. I learned the 7-day rescue plan for an ugly plant after a particularly humid summer where everything seemed to be covered in powdery mildew. If your plant starts to look dirty rather than antique, here is what you do. First, remove any leaves that have white spots or black mold. Second, trim only the flowers that have physically collapsed or turned mushy. Third, give the base of the plant a deep, slow soak with a bit of diluted seaweed extract. This isn't a heavy feed, it's a tonic that helps the plant's immune system. Within 7 days, the plant will usually stabilize, and the remaining flowers will continue to age gracefully without the disease spreading. The secret isn't a magic chemical, it's the 10-second rule of observation. Every morning, take 10 seconds to look at the transition. Is it getting crispy or silky? Silky is what we want. If it's crispy, you need more mulch. If it's silky, you are on your way to a professional-grade vintage border. Many sellers won't tell you this because they want you to buy new plants every 3 weeks. But at No Secret Gardening, we want you to save your money and your back. But wait, there is one final category of plants that are the absolute toughest of the lot. I saved them for last because they are the heavy lifters of the winter garden. How do you know if you've officially moved from being a beginner to a real grower? There are 3 specific signs to look for in your plants as the season closes. I'll reveal the final decision map for the entire year and the ultimate checklist to know if your garden is truly aging like wine in our final part. The toughest plants in the garden are the ones that carry their fine wine colors all the way through the first frosts. These are the true legends of No Secret Gardening. When everything else has turned to mush, these plants stand tall with skeletal beauty and rich, earthy tones. If you've made it this far, you've realized that a garden isn't a static painting, it's a moving, breathing cycle. To finish our journey, let's do a strategic summary by environment so you can walk out to your yard tomorrow with a clear plan. If you are in a full-sun backyard, your decision map is all about protection. Keep that mulch thick and don't touch those seed heads. They are protecting the crown of the plant from the coming cold. If you are in partial shade, you have the luxury of the longest color transition. Enjoy those dusky greens and purples. If you are a pot or apartment gardener, your final move of the season is to move those containers to a spot where they can still get light, but are protected from heavy, freezing rain, which can ruin the papery texture of the flowers. So, how do you know if you've become a real grower? Here is your final checklist of 3 signs it's working. You look at a faded bronze flower and see texture and history instead of a mess that needs cleaning. You notice that the soil under your plants is cool and lively thanks to your commitment to the no shelter, no drama rule. You find yourself spending more time enjoying the garden with a cup of coffee and less time stressed out with the pruning shears. Let's recap our environment-specific strategy one last time. Full sun all day. Mulch is your best friend. Protect the soil to preserve the leaf. Partial shade. Minimize watering as the season ends to let the colors cure. Pot, apartment. Rotate for even fading and avoid the backside heat from walls. Small backyard. Group plants together so they create their own humid microclimate. I never make the mistake of over-fertilizing in late summer anymore. I never water from the top, which causes rot on those delicate aging petals. And I never buy a plant just because it looks perfect at the nursery without checking if it has the stamina to age well. This approach has saved me hundreds of dollars and untold hours of back-breaking work. You don't need a green thumb to have a professional-looking border. You just need to stop fighting the natural cycle of the plants you love. If you found value in this fine wine approach to gardening, do me a favor. Subscribe to No Secret Gardening so you don't miss our next deep dive into the secrets the big sellers don't want you to know. Leave a comment below and tell me which plant in your garden has the most beautiful, faded look. And if you have a friend who is a serial deadheader and cuts everything back too soon, share this video with them. Let's help everyone grow a garden that gets better with age. Grow with ease, smarts, and love. See you next time.